Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Michael Lowry are now over 100 days into their term of government. So I think it's only right that we look back over those 100 days and see what it is that they have accomplished. Before they started, they elected Verona Murphy as the Ceann Comhairle. Despite the fact that she couldn't speak Irish, despite the fact that she's supposed to be impartial, and despite the fact that she seems to have only been elected because of a shady deal between Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Michael Lowry. Then, when it came time to kickstart their term, they hit the ground running by taking a 2-week holiday. Then they came back, gave themselves a pay rise and decided to try and put members of their own government onto the opposition benches until the opposition went... Then they said, okay, we won't do that, and they turned their attention towards the housing situation. Not because they were going to do anything about it, but because the public found out that they'd lied last year about how many houses they'd built. They said that they didn't lie, and then Pearse Doherty found a letter that proved that they did lie, and then Micheál Martin went over to America to visit Donald Trump, and he had a great big laugh at the housing crisis.
No, it's true.
Will you put more tariffs on the EU?
More people became homeless, taking us to the highest level of homelessness in the history of the state. Then we found out that the government had spent millions of euro in taxpayer money on projects that never actually happened. And then Simon Harris and Micheál Martin went, whoops, and then it happened again, and again, and again. Then we heard from the Central Statistics Office, and they told us that almost half of the country is struggling to make ends meet, with some people barely being able to afford the basic necessities. In response to that, the government decided to scrap energy credits so that the people that were already struggling will just have to struggle a bit harder. Micheál Martin considered scrapping rent pressure zones so that landlords could raise the prices. Then he said that he didn't say that, but then he said that he might do it anyway. More people became homeless, taking us to the highest level of homelessness in the history of the state. And yes, I'm aware I've said that already, but it happened again. Then the government tried to quietly introduce water charges until Sinn Féin jumped on them like a pack of wild dogs until they backed down. Then the speaking rights row broke out again, and the impartial Ceann Comhairle, who just so happens to be friends with Michael Lowry, rammed through the vote. The opposition tabled a motion of no confidence, and then the government tabled a motion of confidence, and Verona Murphy was saved, much to the delight of this man. Then we learned that children who didn't need surgeries were given surgeries anyway for financial gain, and the children who did need surgeries were waiting so long for those surgeries that some of them became inoperable, all under the watchful eye of our government. The Irish people said that they're happy with the triple lock, so Simon Harris and Micheál Martin are getting rid of the triple lock. The living wage that was due to be implemented later this year has now been postponed until suspiciously close to the next general election. Micheál Martin said that he was appointing a housing czar to do the job of the Minister for Housing on 4 times the salary, and then a few hours later his colleague said that there were no plans to introduce a housing czar. Then a couple of months later the government decided to introduce a housing czar, and then a few days after that the government decided not to introduce a housing czar. Oh, and then we had even more people becoming homeless, taking us to the highest level of homelessness in the history of the state.